who I'm here representing my Chief Manager, Commercial, Mrs. Cynthia Apoli Aka, Chief Manager, Commercial Department of Ghana Water Company. I'm happy to be part of you this afternoon for this discussion. I would like to say that on my part, if you ask me what circularity means, I would say it is an economical way of using the available resources. So if I will basically want to talk on access to water. So circularity to me will help conserve the little water that we have and we are wasting to be able to manage it well and also give access to others who are denied access. Ghana Water Company, our core mandate is to provide safe drinking water. And how do we do that without the availability of provide safe drinking water? So to me, circularity is a welcome idea. And if we embrace it, it will be a plus to our economy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for these interesting opening remarks. Dr. Abbas, let me come to you because it seems like you've laid the foundation for, really understanding what the water access concern is, and then Mr. Prosper also spoke a bit about the energy access concerns. In fact, let me just start with you. This whole concept of circular economy seems like it's something that is emerging. It's something that people should know about. My question is, how does government go about sensitizing people on this concept of circular economy, and how that relates to water access issues? If you had to suggest, a way in which they could sensitize the public, what would be your suggestion?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. As I said in my opening remarks, the whole concept of circular economy is at a very younger stage within the water sector. This is because when you look at the broader concept of circular economy, where they talk about the strategies using the R strategies, some of these strategies does not necessarily fit into the water sector. For instance, if you say we should repair, we should remanufacture, we should refurbish, how are you going to do that with water? Beginning, there's a need for really conceptualizing what water is. How do we see water? Do we see it as an economic product that we allow the forces of demand and supply, as the economists will say, to operate? So where there is demand and supply, where one goes down, one goes up, it affects the pricing. Do we allow it to be into this domain so that we determine who will be able to get access to water depending on his or her economical factor? Or we treat water as a human right issue, that everybody has the right to get that particular water? But there's a general consensus that we cannot continue doing things as usual and expect that going forward, we will all go to our homes and open our taps and the water will be flowing. Going to get the direct source, as I gave you the paper that has been done, that's at the global scale. When you zoom into Ghana, for instance, previously, most of our communities, we depend directly on water is coming from surface water, from rivers. Going forward, when our population was growing, we were generating a lot of waste. Now there's the need for us to treat that water. Now we've realized that most of our surface water are getting polluted. There is now a huge public outcry that we can go and tap our groundwater resources. But how much groundwater do we have? How is it distributed? How is the quality? What is the impact of over abstraction of this particular groundwater? All these are still gray areas that we really don't know. And Another key area to which we need to also have information about is what we call the transboundary aquifers. Just like the rivers flow from, they don't respect any geographical or political boundary. A river can flow through 3, 4, 5 countries and go. The same applies to groundwater. It's likely 2 or 3 or 4 countries, especially when you take the Nubian aquifer, which is within Ethiopia, I think Egypt and other countries that share that particular aquifer. It's a huge groundwater reserve. So they come together to manage it. When you zoom it into our country, what extent do we share our aquifers with our neighboring countries? All this information are quite great. So I think what we can do now is the government can only do two things. In terms of legislation, we need to sit down and get the much information that we need and put out legislations that will be able to protect our water resources. And secondly, the governance structure. Apart from when you put in the legislation that is supposed to do, what governance structure do you have to put in place to be able to manage this resource for our optimum good? In the circular economy within the water sector, it's important that when we are treating it, we look at water as not just a resource, not just a product, or not just a service. And when you look at water too, it also has another special characteristics. It doesn't exist in one state. You can have water existing in liquid states at some points. You can also have water existing in gaseous state at some point, and you can also find water as solid at some particular point. So within the circular economy nexus, which parts do we consider when we are dealing with the circular economy? Are we only considering the cycle, the loop in which there is an economic framework or there is a potential economic benefit that the circular economy must follow, or we must look at it in entirety? Then, when you consider the water also as a service or as a product, like Ghana Water, for instance, when they take the water, they take it to a certain process and then they bring it out to us and sell it to us as a product and then we pay. Now, what about those who also consider water as a service, which is maybe for swimming pool, for recreational, or as a career, or something that they also use within their production system? How do they also come into the nexus to take care of the circular economy that we are talking about? And within the water sector too, Prof made mention that there are two key things that we look at. That is the reuse and recycle. Now, when you reuse the water, I will try to differentiate between the reuse, because in terms of the reuse, when you use water, you use the water for another purpose without necessarily going to a certain form of treatment. But when we talk about the recycling, it means that you have to do a form of treatment that introduces extra cost to that activity. Is these two concepts enough for us to, when we are dealing with water and within the circular economy nexus? I think it's not enough, simply because, for instance, if we want to really manage water within the circular economy, I think the three key areas that we have to look at is: one, decreasing. By decreasing, I mean where it is possible, if we can avoid using of the water, then as much as possible we'll avoid it. Even though it's very difficult for us to avoid, but these days technologies are coming in. When you are in the aircraft, when you use that, it's used pressure, air pressure to take it away without necessarily using water. Then under decreasing, we also have to find out as much as possible to reduce. How do we consumption? If I need 2 liters of water, why must I use 10 liters of water? It's sometimes very difficult to do, especially when you find yourself maybe with a big family or children. I remember my kids, I've tried to tell them to conserve water, but we're not listening. So one day I was entering my house, then I realized that before my meter, there is a knob. So I decided to close it and cause artificial water shortage. So when I closed it for the past 1 week, the water in my house was not flowing. So I asked them to go and fetch water from the next, about some 3 or 4 houses away. So when they went and fetched the water and came, after they finished, there were two girls. So I decided to go and fetch the water to go and wash my car. My small girl came and said, no, 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 daddy, you cannot do that. When we do, the water will finish. And I said, oh, okay. When it finishes, you go and fetch again and come. You see, by so doing, they now appreciate when we are talking about how to conserve the water. Another area that I want us to look at is the optimization. Apart from decreasing, we have to also find a way of optimizing the way we use the water. And finally, retaining. Quality is very important, especially within the water sector. for a water to be used for a particular purpose, we have to make sure that it meets certain standards. Now, when that standard is met, how do we use the water? Do we use treated water? We have one line. When I'm going to my toilet, I use treated water. When I'm going to drink, I use treated water. If I'm going to do for irrigation, I have to use treated water. Can we have a way or a system such that we will be able to say that, okay, for this particular purpose, if it is for drinking, when you finish, we can do what we call the cascading effect. After this first process, the water go to the next process so that the person who needs for irrigation, after it goes through this process, that person can also be at the last tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abbas. I think he deserves a round of applause. Very, very insightful strategies. Mr. Prosper, let me come to you because I know you spoke a bit about the energy link here, energy access issues with the circular economy. I mean, I know that renewable energy should sort of kickstart this process where people are more concerned about conservation, but please just enlighten us, briefly, in your own words, how this issue of circular economy and energy access is important for us here in Ghana.
Thank you very much. So let me go back to first principles, the concept of circularity and as it applies within the energy sector. As I indicated yesterday and other speakers also did yesterday and today, the whole essence is to reduce the rate at which we extract our resources within the context of energy resources, and also reduce as much as possible the waste between the supply and then the demand, or resource extraction and then resource consumption. Within the energy sector, to trying to reduce the energy intensity as well as CO2 emissions. You see, when you start talking about reducing CO2 emissions and energy access, what immediately comes to our mind is solar. And we've heard a lot of noise and advocacy about how solar is green. Number two, we are blessed with the sun because of our location relative to the equator. Why are we not tapping, the power of the sun to generate electricity using solar panels, or to generate heat using solar tubes? As we were coming to the hotel through the other side, you saw the solar water heating systems installed there. Instead of using electricity to heat the water, you heat the water using the power of the sun. In fact, even though I am a proponent of renewable energy, particularly solar, but I'm always very careful, especially within the context of circularity, to point out that, see, when it comes to solar, it is not entirely green. There is one aspect of it that we are not always enlightened more about. And I'm happy I am with professors and then lecturers at the University of Environment and Sustainable Development. You see, if you take time and do the life cycle analysis of the production of solar cells or solar panels, you realize that it is more like robbing Peter to pay Paul. What do I mean by that? To produce a solar ingot or the silicon ingot that are used to produce the crystalline solar cells, where do we get most of it? From China. China uses coal to produce the solar cells. They use coal to produce coal power to produce the solar cells. Then we then use the solar cells to harvest the power of the sun. So when we're talking about greenness relative to solar, let's always bring in the relativity. It is greener relative to fossil fuel. But granted that that is what we have. Within the context of circularity, to help increase energy access, as I indicated in my introductory remarks, how? You have communities that are located far away from the urban centers. As most of you will know, most of our power is generated from the southern part of the country. But you have the northern part of the country that requires power. Even if you consider the southern part and also the northern part, there are villages that are far away from the urban centers, even as we speak. If you agree that our electricity access rate is not 100%, you agree that there are still communities not connected to the grid. Remember, we get most of our power in the grid from fossil fuel. How does it increase energy access? Our goal in the context of circularity is reducing carbon dioxide emissions. So our best bet is renewable energy. Renewable energy within the context of circularity will help us electrify those remote communities. It will help us for two main things. Because in those remote communities, you have enough space to be able to install the solar systems and provide them with electricity. A government will come and say, oh, don't worry, we will extend the grid there, because you know, some of the parliamentarians, extending grid electricity to some of the villages is part of their campaign promises. But if you ask ECG or NETCO, if they will be truthful to themselves and if they understand the economics of circular economy or renewable energy or energy generation, they'll tell you, look, it is better to deploy solar in those rural areas than to extend the grid. Two main advantages. Having one radial line, let me say from Tamale to a remote village closer to the Togolese border, one radial line, you will not suffer technical losses not less than 30%. Technical losses means money going to waste. Number two, that remote community, the population may just be about 300 people. But of course, they are Ghanaians and they deserve electricity. NETCO will fuel a pickup, probably have 2 people in the car. If they want to be security conscious, they add 1 person, 3. The cost of fueling the car and the cost of paying them per diem to that village to collect electricity bills for about 100 inhabitants, that cost is more than the electricity bills they collect. So deploying solar for that community and training the community members to be able to collect the electricity bills and also maintain the solar systems presents us with a lot of opportunity to save money and also reduce the danger of travel. So within the context of circularity, this is how it will help us improve energy access. Another one, based on the geographical location of Ghanaians. If you take the Volta Lake, we have more than 200 island communities around the Volta Lake. As I indicated, they are Ghanaians and it is their fundamental human rights to be provided with electricity service, not just only electricity service, but quality service. Technically, you can transmit power over the Volta Lake to those island communities. But if you do the economic analysis, it does not make sense to deploy all those complex technicalities to string those pylons to be able to deliver electricity on those islands. What do? You deploy renewable energy-based mini grids. Because of the weather patterns or unpredictability of the weather patterns, again, because of climate change, you can hybridize that electricity supply system by either adding wind. But before you add wind, we are within academics. You need to do some analysis to be able to know the wind speeds or the quality of the wind resource before you add it. The third component that you can add to increase the energy security within that island, you could also add maybe a 50 kVA gen set, because there is that mindset within those islands that, oh, no, the electricity from the solar panel, they need the one from the grid. But what they are just trying to tell you is that with renewable energy, there's also reliability of supply. So having a hybrid system will help. But of course, the main source of electricity for those island community will be the renewable energy source. And when you do this, you are able to increase energy access to those communities. And when you do that, even when the MP doesn't even come there, but only comes whenever they are having elections, they are okay and they will also feel as Ghanaians. So this is how the context of circular economy can help increase energy access in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prosper. That was very insightful. But let me now come to you, Madam Cynthia, because I'm keen on understanding how the service provider looks at this type of situation, right? You want to be able to curb the waste, right? And then repurpose whatever resources in the system so that you can increase optimization. And from earlier presentations, from Prof's presentation, I think he made the point about targeted subsidies. I don't know how in your case, the water service provider sees that. If there are people, if there are firms or households that are forward-looking, right? And they want to, tap into the system. They have the resources to institute, a prototype that is, follows this circular economy situation. They can save on water, save, energy and stuff like that. Do they get any, is there a situation where they could ever get a subsidy on their water bill, for instance?
Thank you. Um, in fact, the service provider, which is Ghana Water Company, is fully owned by the government, and it is the duty of the government to provide safe drinking water to all citizens of the nation. And you all agree with me that due to limited and then scarce resources, government is unable to provide enough for the service provider to do what is expected of him. So we have a situation at hand that um, a section of the population have access to the commodity and is able to afford for it. Others have access to it, but they cannot afford it. So the product is available, but getting it's a problem. So uh, government is in partnership with so many organizations, and one is the USAID, then so many others that come in to help with projects that can help the vulnerable or the one that needs subsidy to also get access to water. But that accessibility is very limited. It is very, very, very limited. And as a provider, we will want government to try to pump in um, more funds into the sector to enable us expand so that when we are able to expand and the service is available, it will be easier for people to access it. And probably the government will also bring up a legislation which will help the vulnerable access some subsidy in terms of payment to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for her. So having laid this foundation, I mean, we now, I think it's clear now what the water access concern is and the energy access concern is. And then also from the perspective of the provider, perhaps, yes, so if you get more funding, obviously you can do more. But then you cannot really control the way the consumers will respond. That I think is a challenge. But before you respond to that, let me quickly just bring in this issue about welfare, which came up from the earlier presentation. That is to say that, look, if we are going to shift into renewables, we are moving into a system where, we are reducing waste and being efficient in optimization, there will be some job losses, to be honest. This concept of energy transition is going to come with some job losses. Managing what do you call it, waste, managing water. There are people whose businesses depend on connecting people with water access or whatever it is. Just perhaps from Abbas, I'd like you to just share your thoughts on if you think the welfare loss is actually worth it, and that by all means we should push for circular economy and efficient optimization of water resources?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think sometimes when we are discussing we need to put it in context that going forward is about fighting for our survival. We can't continue doing business as usual. The amount we are getting from the raw source is declining, and the quality of the resource is also declining. So, if there is an option or an alternative that can help us manage this resource for us and then for the future generations to come, that should be our focus. As for job losses, yes. At the same time, we forget that whilst some are losing jobs, other jobs are also being created. Somebody said that this AI, artificial intelligence, people are coming to lose jobs. And somebody say, no, it is those who don't know how to use AI, they are going to lose jobs. But it's something we cannot block it from coming. This AI, now you can put in a topic or something in an AI system, and it generates a whole paper for you. Whether we like it or not, it's coming. We can't block it. Now, how do we position ourselves so that we align ourselves in line with what is coming? So, issue of job loss, yes, but then we should look at the bigger picture. Going forward, managing our water resources is going to be a very, very, very difficult thing for us to do. Due to climate change, our rainfall pattern is changing, our surface water, the quality is going low, the treatment cost will be so much that at the end, it becomes very, very expensive. The groundwater we are also hoping to go and rely on is also coming up with some issues that going forward is going to become more complex. It's important that especially this circular economy thing, the earlier we start it, the better. When we want to manage a vital resource like water, we don't wait until when the water is becoming, we have a very small quantity. That is when we begin to manage it. At that point, there will be no point to manage. If you need water, you have a whole poly tank, you are misusing it, you are left with one bucket, then now you say everybody should use 1 cup to bath every day. How long is that bucket going to sustain you? So yes, the concern is people are going to lose jobs. But then, what options do we have? As I said, managing our water resources going forward is going to be about life and death. Countries are going to fight over each other because of this vital resource. It's even already happening. Egypt, Ethiopia, if you are following the issue about the Nile, the whole Egypt's economy and everything is around the Nile. Now, when Ethiopia succeed in doing that, their dam, what happens to Egypt? The groundwater they are all exploiting from the same Nubian aquifer. Some countries are extracting more than the rest. What happens to the others? Now it's going to get to a point where I say, okay, since I'm stronger than you, if you want to do this in your country, I'm going to prevent you from doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bass. Ms. Prosper, let me just hear from you what your perspective, because it looks like, you know, we we need to just balance the rationale behind pushing for circular economy versus, you know, people's uh, personal political sort of interest. In Ghana, if we are promoting circular economy, you know, and asking people to rely more on renewable energy, deploying more of these resources, who gets hurt in the end?
Thank you very much. You see, they said we should not call it a ban on homosexuality or same-sex marriage. They say we should call it proper family, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, the Bill 6, or when it becomes law, it will seek to prevent some of these steps. Now, every activity is an industry. Corruption that we are working so hard to stop is an industry. People are benefiting from it. Armed robbery is an industry. People are benefiting from it. Let's go to US. Gun crime is an industry where that has a big lobby lobbying for it. So no matter what you do, some people will be affected in one way or the other. But let's come home. It is a concept that we are introducing, that is secularity, and some will be inadvertently affected. I was having a discussion with Prof, and he was talking about how to change the teaching or the concept of acquiring knowledge in your university, which I bought so much into. And I got that piece of advice from Elon Musk when I worked with him in 2016 in California. And what is this advice? Diversification of your skills right from the beginning. In one breath, you are a lecturer lecturing environmental science at the university. That is not enough. Forget about circular economy. Forget about artificial intelligence. Even with business as usual, having a linear professional track is not sustainable. If you are a professor in environmental studies, please maybe learn something else so that the day that your university will be on strike and you have a government that says, if you don't go to school and teach, we will not pay you. It happened in the 80s when the doctors went on strike, and Jerry Rawlings said, we will not pay you if you don't go to the hospital. And he even stretched it further and said, okay, you sit at home. I'm bringing doctors from Cuba. And again, the doctors now came back lobbying Jerry Rawlings so that they'll be called back to work. In such a circumstance, if you're a doctor and you're not being paid, what do you do? So my first point is that diversification of skills. It is very important whether with circular economy or not as an individual. Let's make progress. Circular economy has come. What do we do? Before we pursue that whole concept of circular economy and begin to implement some of the opportunities that it provides that I attempted to articulate yesterday, we need to think through it, analyze the impact, find out which areas will it impact more. It will impact. So all that we need to do is to mitigate the degree of impact. It's the same thing we are doing with climate change. So if we are mitigating the all-powerful force like climate change, is it circular economy? So when we do proper analysis, then we'll begin to find other alternatives so that they will not be worse off. As I cited yesterday, there are young people within the Savannah region whose job is to produce charcoal or cut down trees to produce charcoal for commercial purposes. The chief comes to say, I have banned charcoal production. What the chief is trying to do, if he had done what he wanted before, he consulted, was just to change the profession of those young people, probably to crime. But with the change in strategy, he said, okay, you know what? I will not let the young people be off work. I am going to provide them land so that they'll go into woodlot cultivation and be able to go back to their activity. Because in the end, we're looking at the larger impact on the bigger masses. So we can mitigate the impact by some of these steps. The other thing is that other jobs will be created. So that even brings us back to apply some of the concepts. We are talking about reuse, refurbish. To ameliorate or mitigate that thing, we can also bring another and that is what? Retrain. When we do retraining, then we can mitigate the job losses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed listening. So your reactions to
Yes, I also believe, just as fellow panelists have already said, that definitely there will be some job losses, but you cannot have eat your cake and then have it. So we'll always have to trade off. I'm a unionist and I protect my workers from job losses, going through job losses. But I think that when there is an idea or a program that will help the nation as a whole, that will bring sanity, I think that we should find other alternatives to the negative part of it and embrace it. I think that, for instance, if we come to the water industry and then we agree or we decide that we are going to use water, reuse it, and recycle, I believe that some more jobs will be created in that aspect. So, if somebody, on the other hand, loses from there, he will still have the opportunity to go to the other side. And for instance, if we should embrace this with the water services sector, I think people will start to think twice. You know, Ghanaians, as Dr. Kwanda said yesterday, we know the right thing, but we don't want to do it. So if it comes to a time or a level that there's a legislation saying that you will have to use your water and reuse it, and even some will have to be recycled. People would now sit down, citizens will sit down and think back, what is happening? How do you expect me to use my water and reuse it again? What are the reasons for that? It is then that people are going to talk about the deforestation, the galamsey activities, the filling up of the wetlands, our negative activities that are affecting our water resources. And probably they will start retracting from those negative activities. So to me, I think it's going a long way to help to reform us as citizens, and it will create job, and there will also be job losses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give her a round of applause. Right. So I just have like one last question. I think maybe would help us bring out the key issues here. And I want to take off from where Mr. Prosper you stopped, because you spoke about retraining, right? And that to me sounds like a reorientation of people's minds towards resource management and efficient utilization. So maybe let me start from you, madam, as a service provider. Perhaps is there any thinking, around regular training and discussion of how to efficiently manage the resource, the water resource as it is, and how maybe this is connected to a circular economy. I don't know. Maybe you can speak about this region, and if there are any specific strategies, and perhaps what is happening at the level of the institution.
Okay. So um, for Ghana Water, currently, we think that there's a need for retraining. And for that matter, we have an old institute at Weja, which we used to call Ghana Water Training School. Now we have refurbished it and renamed it into Ghana uh, Institute of Water. And we have started this year from May to retrain our people. So there is a program that all departments are going to be retrained, and we have started so far from 2 departments, and that is going on. In fact, we have come to the realization that we cannot do things the old way we used to do. We also need to re-strategize and then see how we can manage our service sustainably to also be able to serve Ghanaians. So there are a lot of training that are already ongoing, both internal and then externally. And I think that is going to bring a lot of change to the organization as a service industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And once again, I want to thank you all for your time in this session. It's been very interesting points that you have raised. We do need to wrap up, unfortunately. So maybe let me just do a quick round of closing comments based on what we have spoken about. What is the one key takeaway you want our audience to have, those online, those here, about some of these concerns we've spoken about, energy wise, water wise? What is the one key takeaway you would want them to have? Prosper, maybe you can start.
Yes, thank you very much. I think I will let tee off from the training aspect. You see, and again, I am happy to talk about the training issues of our training, which is a concern from arising from job losses. I am happy because I am in the midst of very wonderful teachers. We need, right from the undergraduate level or whichever level, to change the orientation of students. That look, studying is not punishment. Right from the classroom level, even to the corporate or even the institutions. Many workers, particularly government workers, we see training as a punishment. To the extent that even if they are taking you for training and you are not giving per diem, you will find very little people going for the training. Now, the training within public sector or government sector now is more about per diem, to the extent that there is a training for a technician and you find a director going for that training because of per diem. So with the advent of these new concepts and technology, we need to change our orientation towards training and also retraining. Because even with that secular economy, things are changing within the same industry. You need to be efficient to be able to provide quality service. You need to be efficient to be able to cut down on your cost so the salary can be increased. But all of this comes with training. And I had a daddy who was a chief director in one of the ministries. People didn't like going for training because of him under his regime. Because if there is a training and it's for a technician, and then he passes it down by bureaucracy to you, the director, and you want to go, you say, no, don't go. This is for a national service person, especially when it is abroad. If you are able to still go and come back, unfortunately for them, he was a professor. You come back and do presentation before the whole staff. He will ask you for a report with recommendations on how the knowledge that you have gained will be able to improve the activities of the institution. If we all have such mindset in our institutions and we are able to change the orientation of staff, that look, training whether with or without per diem is not punishment, but it's for your own personal development, then irrespective of whatever new concept comes, we will have that orientation and flexibility to readjusting to be able to reap the full benefit of that concept that is coming. And when we do that, concerns about job losses will be very, very limited. We'll actually even be excited to begin not only thinking outside the box, but within the economy that we live in now, the boxes are now very expensive. So you need to create your own box and think inside it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abbas.
Thank you very much. In conclusion, I will say that our water resources landscape is changing, and at the same time, as it's changing, the demand is also growing, especially the competition from other sectors. As we are thinking about industrialization, this will also come with a lot of demand for water. We are talking about food production, agriculture, as our population is growing. This will also demand for a lot of water. Linear models doesn't seem to be the solution to us. This circular economic concept is a concept that has shown a great potential that can help us manage our water resources. But at the same time, I'm advocating strongly that in using the circular economic concept in water, we don't have to put it among other sectors and treat it like the way the other sectors are because of its usual and unusual characteristics that the water resources is having. But broadly, we need to rethink. It's very important how we manage this vital resource. As much as possible, decreasing if we can. By so decreasing, I mean we can avoid where we can avoid the use of water, we can reduce, and then where we can replace too, we do. Another area is about optimization. We have to make sure that where we can reuse the water, we do, where we have to recycle or cascading, and then retaining. These days, the concept of managed aquifer recharge is coming. When the flood waters comes, what do we do to the flood waters? We just allow them to just carry our belongings, and we wait the following year for the flood to come. There are a lot of concepts that we can do that we can harvest this flood water, or at the same time maybe create what we call the managed aquifer recharge, where we can force some of this surface water to go into the ground to go and form as a storage for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will conclude by saying that as we live here, we should be a change and we should talk to others about the need of change. Circularity is good. I know it will be good to embrace it, but it has to be gradually. And I know it will involve a huge uh, capital. So it's something that we need to talk about, we need to discuss, we need to advocate, we need to talk to people, and also hope that when we eventually um, accept the concept and then move into full scale, we should also be talking about its sustainability, which is very important. As Dr. Akonda said yesterday, as for Ghana, we are always ready to embrace any concept that is available or program that is introduced, but how to sustain it is always a problem. So let's be the mouthpiece of this conception and then speak about the positive parts of it to the Ghanaian community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, my panelists, for such an interesting time and the presentations. I'm told we do have time for just one very burning question. If you do have a very specific burning question you want to ask any of our panelists, we can do so in the next minute or two before we take a break. I see several hands, but I can only take two questions. So I can only take two questions. Forgive me because of time. Um, Yes, please go on.
Yeah, thank you, Ambo. Dr. Abbas, you mentioned that we can look at water issues from um, human rights perspective. Now, if we are looking at water supply, but treated one from the human rights point of view, my question is that in that case, are we not violating the right of those that we don't supply water to? I mean, the rural areas who would have to go around hunting for um, potable water? Are we not violating their rights? And then you also mentioned something that water movement is no respecter of boundaries.
Yeah, please, just one question per person. It's because of time. Dr. Enin?
Yeah. No.
Okay, let me take Dr. Enin and then Dr. Kakari can come.
Hello.
Solar, yeah. I think that the cost of maintaining solar panel is more expensive than, I don't know your take on that, but that's what have heard, that it's very expensive to maintain the solar panels. Is there no other option instead of the solar?
Yeah. Okay, yes, Dr. Kakari, we take his question and then we wrap up and then you can all respond and then we wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Dr. Keria Pierre. My question is not a question per se, it's a general contribution that we can all discuss further. Mr. Proper has made a very important and significant contribution. And something is really, really bothering my mind. You see, we were relying on non-renewable energy resources as a country, especially in 2007 when commercial oil and gas quantity were discovered. 2010, commercial production started. In 2013, the local content bill was passed. And then government encouraged youth and others to take advantage in the oil and gas value chain. It was in this regard that I did my PhD in energy and focused on oil and gas. Before I graduated, there was a policy already in Ghana now promoting energy transition. In 2010, in 2011, a parliamentary passed an act, what became the 2011 Act 832, the Renewable Energy Act. The idea was to produce 10% uh, non-renewable energy to support the national, the grid, the normal grid that we know, so that the off-grid communities, like Mr. Proper said, could be saved with that 10%. After a whooping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, when they did assessment, the review, they were able to achieve just 1.5% of the target. So now, those communities were on they were trying to be on the main grid. They couldn't serve them. They say we are coming with solar energy. After whooping 10 years, they couldn't also serve them. Now they've come out with at 1045 as an amendment. It's even called a master plan, renewable energy master plan, serve these people. The question then becomes, what should we believe again as people? Because we were here, we couldn't. We were here, we couldn't. Now to conclude, last year we had the privilege of hosting a deputy minister in our university to talk about the energy transition policy. I was not allowed to finish asking all my questions, and the microphone was taken. Because there were a lot of questions to ask that man.
Yeah, but you should wrap up this one so that we
Yes,
don't take the microphone
yes,
from you.
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
so please, if you can do so in the next 30 seconds so that he will
Yes,
respond.
I'm coming. I want to wrap up this one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it will take me more than 2 minutes.
Your 30 seconds nearly up, so you need to ask a question now.
So the question then is, now as I speak, there is a deputy minister of energy designated to promote and encourage youth in oil and gas. There is a Ghanaian youth in the oil and gas. There is even a committee in our school, of which I'm a member, and Prof. 2 is a member, where we have to prepare local content and encourage Ghanaian youth go to Ghana oil and gas. There is a policy on transition. There is amendment policy on renewable energy. What are we? That's my question. Thank you.
So if you can just, I think the questions were to Abbas and Prosper. Madam Sita, you didn't get any specific. I don't know if you have any specific, but I think if you can each use about a minute,
Yes.
then we can wrap up. Thanks.
The point I was trying to highlight is that if you could remember yesterday, when the presentation was done on the circular economy in terms of, I think it was, that's why you did something like that. He focused on the economics aspect of it, the money people will make. And I'm trying to emphasize the point that within the water sector, if we are going to embrace this concept of circular economy, if we go on purely on economics basis, then we are going to cut a lot of people out. I'll give you a typical scenarios. Earlier, rural water supply, what we do is we go and site the well, the borehole, and once we drill the borehole, we leave the borehole for the community to manage and have their water. But we realized after some time, when these boreholes spout, they remain there and waiting those who drill the borehole to come and repair it for them. So they brought another concept again and said, okay, because the people have gotten it for free, so they don't manage it, they don't take good care of it. So now what we should do is that, let's say that community should contribute maybe 10 or 15%, then there's going to be that form of ownership. People are now going to own it. By so doing, they are going to take care of the water. We tried that one too. It also never worked. Now, we are now moving to the stage where community water now wants to manage that particular facility. You see, the management is so important that if it's not managed very well, and the efficiency is very low, the output you get will also definitely is going to become very low. But what I'm trying to push is that, yes, the circular economy is good. When we are applying the circular economy within the water sector, we must not treat it as we are treating other sectors within the circular economic cycle. That is why the issue of we have to rethink and define, how do we see water? We see water as maybe a resource that if you have the capital, you can go, and then it becomes, and we allow the market forces to determine the price of the water. If I'm Ghana Water now, I realize that, okay, East Legon people, if I give them a bill of maybe 10 cedis per 1,000 cubic, they can pay. And then I don't want to, maybe another community, even if I give them 1 Ghana cedis per this, they cannot pay. Where would you think I'll push my water to? I'll consciously push that water to. At the same time, you see that I'm now going, because at that point, it's the economics that is driving the whole thing. They'll make more money if it goes towards that direction. This is where I'm advocating that, yes, circular economy is good. You realize that it hinges on 3 key areas: environment, social, and then the economics. Where do we lay emphasis when it comes to a particular sector? That is the point that I'm trying to make. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, as Dr. Abbas indicated, you see, it is like even governance. Government is mandated to provide free education for those who cannot afford it. But remember, whatever you provide free, it is not entirely free. Somebody must pay for it. So it's a balancing act. Some people must provide the money to keep the schools running so that that social intervention can be provided to the poorest of the poor. So it's a balancing act. There is nothing absolutely free. And as Dr. Bass indicated, when you come to the water sector, even within the context of circular economy, there are some people you need to provide them the water nearly free, if not free, because they can't afford it. And it's a social service that you need to provide. But again, your water pumping system and your infrastructure need to be maintained. Who provides the money? So it is important you have both the East Legon people in your loop as well as the Choco people too in your loop, so that the East Legon people will help you maintain the system. Because if the system is broken down for lack of money, the Choco people who cannot afford cannot even get access to the water. So you need a balancing act. Now, with circular economy, there is still an incentive within the water system as it is in the energy sector. Water usage efficiency. I don't know about how your tariff billing structure is. If you take the energy billing structure or the tariff structure, we have bands. One band is called the lifeline for the poorest of the poor. And it's so structured in a way that it inherently forces you to be efficient. Because if you consume beyond a certain capacity, the rate at which you pay increase. And that is enough measure to ensure water usage efficiency, reduce waste. That brings in circular economy concepts. And in the end, you as a household, you save money in your pocket. In the end, the amount of water that you extract reduces, helping the environment. I hope you get the point. You are able to run your system to provide for the poorest of the poor, the society. There is a last P that we always forget. We think about planet, we think about people, that's the second P. We think about profit, the third P. But there is one P that we forget, and that is peace. When we take care of the planet, we provide for the people, the businesses have profit, there will be employment, you will have reduction in crime, and all of us will have peace. So circular economy is extremely important. The implementation must be well balanced. Coming back to Madam's question, I'm sorry, maybe you have been, I wouldn't say misinformed, I want to be very diplomatic. They didn't give you the whole story. If you take the economic analysis of any solar system, whether it's a solar farm or a system on your roof, the cost of maintenance, we call it O&M, operations and maintenance is 1%. It's 1%. Let me be practical. If I install a solar system in your house, there are 3 things that I will tell you regarding maintenance. Clean the panel. Clean it. Sometimes rain can help you clean it if you're not located within dusty areas. Because if you don't clean the panel, the efficiency of the conversion of the sun rays into electricity reduces. The other thing I will tell you is that install the battery and the inverter probably in your garage or under your staircase if your house is a story building, or at a place where you have constant flow of air to ensure that the temperature is maintained at an optimum. That's the second thing I will tell you. The third thing I will tell you, probably if you have a housemate, I will extend it to her. Don't put your gas cylinder on the battery. Or if the battery is installed closer to a window, sometimes you are forced to install it closer to a window because of aeration. But if you want to clean the window, don't stand on the battery. In short, the maintenance of solar system, it is less costly, about 1%. And it has to do with behavioral aspects of our living. So it is not a big deal when it comes to that. Let me go back to Dr. Kakari. Is it Kari or Kakari? Kakari. Kakari, you have actually taken the wind off my sail. In this country, most of the policies that we come up with, we ourselves know we don't believe in them. Why do I say so? Most of the policies, and I'll take the Renewable Energy Act, 2011 Act 832, for example. We're not even planned. And then German government said they have some money. And then they come and then you agree, and then you plan it. And sometimes if you want to even know that a policy or a regulation is not well thought through, take the regulation as is passed by parliament, go to Google. You will see that we copied it from another country and then change the font sizes, the font types, and change certain figures. So I do agree with you. And the cure to what you've just complained about is having a national development plan that is legislated and it is law, so that we will not be confused. World Bank come and say, oh, we have money, we want to put it in KVIP. Another one say, oh, we have money, we want to put it here. So they dictate our development pace and agenda. No. Apart from Ghana, I work in Rwanda. For Rwanda, they have a national development plan. They have politician MPK, QRC. Kagame will tell you, you are all allowed to campaign with your manifesto, but your manifesto must be based on the national development plan. If we have that in Ghana, that will dictate the policies we come up with. It will dictate the regulations we come up with. And most importantly, Dr. Kakari, it will be dictate and ensure that all our policies and regulations are inspired by science and data. Thank you very much.
Wow. Wow. A further round of applause. I mean, this is marvelous. Mr. Prosper, thank you very much for such a beautiful closing. Madam Cynthia and Dr. Abbas, thank you very much for your participation. Vincent? Innocentia, yes. Thank you very much. Well, colleagues, friends, you can always engage with our panelists, in the break session, the lunch session. If you have any further questions, you can always engage with them. Thank you very much for your attention and your participation, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you.